Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for Senate District 2. My name is Nancy Ulrich. I will be the moderator for the forum this evening. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Morgantown-Monongalia County. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization, which means that we are unbiased. We do not favor any political party or entity or any political candidate. We will be on a tight schedule because there's a forum immediately after us, so I am going to start into the proceeding, into the forum, if I may. I first would like to start by introducing our candidates. We have on your right, Mr. Hayhurst, and on the left, Mr. Clements. Okay. They are both running for the office of Senator for District 2. Okay. I would like to welcome the candidates and thank them for participating in this forum. And I would like to jump right into this and get the ball rolling because of our time situation. So this will start by the candidates each giving an introduction to the audience, to the voters, and that will be 2 minutes each. Following the introduction, we then will go immediately into questions that I will be asking. We will alternate. When we change questions, we will alternate the candidates. You get 2 minutes for each response. As this is a forum and not a debate, there will be no rebuttal. There's no scheduled rebuttal. So after I have completed my questions, or we come close to the end of our time, if we're trying to save some time so we can take some questions from the audience. And audience, you will be given a card, which you will write your question on the card, and then it will be given, someone will pick it up if you pass it to the end of the row, and we will ask the questions at that time. Is Autumn showing any of the slides? Is Autumn going to show any of these slides, or should I just skip? Okay. So, Mr. Clements, would you like to give your introduction at this time?
Thank you very much. I'm Charles Clements. I'm a candidate for the state senate from the 2nd Senatorial District. I grew up in southern West Virginia, graduated from Scott High School in Madison, West Virginia, and attended West Virginia University and graduated in 1966 with a degree in mathematics from WVU. I was commissioned as second lieutenant, and I spent 2 years in the military, and then after I left the military, I spent 7 years in the reserve program as I worked in my own business in New Martinsville, West Virginia as a wholesale petroleum distributor. I worked there until we closed our business in 2004, and then I became the office manager for H&R Block in New Martinsville. In the period of 1994, I was elected to the West Virginia House of Delegates and re-elected in 1996, and then was out of the political arena until 2017, when Kent Leonhardt, who was elected as Agriculture Commissioner, vacated his seat, and I was appointed to serve the rest of his term and was elected to a full term in 2018. I am married to my wife, Jeannie, who is here with us tonight, and we have 2 children. I have a son that lives in New Martinsville and a daughter who is a teacher in Roswell, Georgia. And I look forward to returning to the Senate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. Mr. Hayhurst, would you give your introduction, please?
Sure. Good evening, and I want to thank the League of Women's Voters and the NAACP for putting this event on. My name is Eric Hayhurst. I am a resident of Morgantown. I grew up in a small town called Folsom in Wetzel County. I am a product of public education in West Virginia. I am a graduate of Valley High School in 2001 in Pine Grove. I went to WVU for both of my degrees. First, a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, 2005, and then a 2009 graduate of the College of Law. Since that time, I've been spending my career as an attorney representing mostly individuals in various capacities, but mostly individuals who have been injured in some way. In 2017, I left a larger practice and opened my own law practice here in the Morgantown area. I represent individuals all across West Virginia in various capacities. I live here in Morgantown. I have a dog named Baxter, and this is my first time running for office. I've never put my name on a ballot before, been very politically involved, working on campaigns before, but never put my name out there. The reason I put my name on the ballot this time is because I'm concerned for the future of West Virginia. I see us heading in the wrong direction in many ways. Number one for me is public education. I feel that public education is under attack in this state, and children like me, folks who grew up in rural areas, rely on public education, rely on that school system, the school system to educate them. It's also, by the way, the number one thing that businesses look at when they come into a state. I'm also very concerned about our infrastructure, particularly broadband. We have not increased our capacity much in that way, and we need to do that to build a 21st century economy. So I'm here tonight to answer your questions. I look forward to that, and I also look forward to being elected to the Senate on November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayhurst. I would like now to share with you the format. I know we earlier discussed it, but I'd like to tell you again about the format that we will have during this forum. Following your introduction, we will proceed with questions. I will ask the question to you. You will have 2 minutes for a response. We have sitting in the audience a timer that is going, can you hear me? You'll have a timer who will hold up cards that will alert you to where you are in your response. As I am following the questioning, when that question's answered, then we will alternate candidates in asking the second question. If at any time you can't hear me or don't understand me, please ask me to repeat it. I'm having a little trouble with my voice tonight, but so please ask me to repeat it. Okay, so the other thing is, as I had explained to you earlier, that this is a forum, not a debate, so there is no scheduled time for a rebuttal in the forum. Okay, so we're going to start with the questioning. So, Mr. Clements, we'll start with you with the first questioning. In September, the legislature passed House Bill 302 to restrict abortions in West Virginia more than Roe v. Wade would have permitted. Voters are still interested in your position on abortion. What is your position on House Bill 302?
Okay. I voted for that bill, and there were reasons behind it. Now, I'm not an attorney, so we have to rely on the information that we receive from our staff attorneys and other attorneys within the legislature. First of all, let me say this. I believe in protecting the unborn. I have been contacted by both male and female constituents who say that bill went too far, and some say it didn't go far enough. I'm a firm believer that we can't be inhumane to mother or child. I would never want to be put in a position where I would have to make a choice between my wife and an unborn child. There would be no question about that, which way I would go. If we failed to do something with that law, there was an injunction by the circuit court in Kanawha County that prohibited the law that was on the books from taking place. If that injunction were lifted, there would be no abortions, period, under any circumstances. There needs to be humane, but yet there needs to be protection for the unborn. I supported that bill, and I will continue to support it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clements. Mr. Hayhurst, what is your position on House Bill 302?
If I were in the Senate, I would have voted against the bill, and here's why. I, like Mr. Clements, agree that there should be exceptions for rape, incest, and life and health of the mother, and for the unborn child, for that matter. The exceptions that are in that bill are illusory in nature. It's what we lawyers call things that aren't actually in reality. They're illusory. They don't really have any effect, and here's why. The time frame we can debate about, the 8 weeks, the 13 weeks. But the issue is, in order for a rape victim to have an abortion, they have to have some report. They have to go to the county sheriff or the city police department or something of that nature to provide, to report that rape, and that has to be given to a physician. Well, that bill doesn't describe in detail or mandate that any police officer in the state of West Virginia provides such a report. As a lawyer, I understand that when a crime is committed, those reports aren't released for months, if not years. And if you have an ideological police department or sheriff, they may never give a rape victim that document. So the exceptions that are in that bill are entirely illusory. More to the point, we also have in most of West Virginia, in many parts of West Virginia, I should say, a OBGYN desert. This bill will make that even worse because although it removed the criminal penalties for a physician providing an abortion against the law, it's still the administrative penalties remain. That standard to prove that by the Board of Medicine is far less than it is a criminal standard. So you leave that to the whim of an administrative board that can prove that to what's called a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not. So the exceptions that are in that bill are illusory. I would have voted no. We need to work on a better bill.
Thank you, Mr. Hayhurst. Mr. Hayhurst, I'm going to direct question 2 to you. West Virginia has a crisis in our foster care system. Too many children in foster care, too few qualified workers to investigate child abuse and neglect, salaries too low to attract qualified professionals, and a shortage of attorneys to act as guardian ad litem. What solutions do you support?
It's a very difficult question, or I should say there are very difficult answers to that question. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have all the answers. But what I can tell you is this legislature has done little to nothing to fix the problem. If I go to Charleston, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. We're going to and get to work to try and fix this issue. It's a major issue. You're right. We don't have enough workers. We don't have enough lawyers. We don't have enough homes to put the children in that need to be home. And it's a circular problem. We start with the opioid epidemic, which has largely created the issue in the first place. We need to fix that. That's where we have to start. This legislature has done nothing about it. They've done zero. There aren't easy solutions, but that's what the legislature's there to do. They're there to solve the hard problems. We need to find solutions to the opioid problem. That will help. We have to put more money into our foster care system, paying DHHR workers better, to be able to attract workers, number one, and retain them. I've heard from DHHR workers on this campaign, they're able to hire folks, but they keep them for about a week to 3 weeks on average, because once they go in and find out the workload, they can't keep them. And you're paying them $20-some thousand a year to do this work that's very difficult, and not just difficult, but it's sad. It's sad work. It's no way to live, unfortunately, and they can find higher paying jobs in other areas. So we've got to put more money into the system. There was a foster care bill, which was decent, that was in before the legislature this year. It created a dashboard and things of that nature. We need to work harder. We need to find better solutions. We need to talk to experts. This legislature is very fond of not holding hearings and not talking to experts. They just create bills and put them out there without talking to folks who actually know what they're doing. That's what I would do. I'd listen to people who are in the business and do what they ask us to do.
Thank you, Mr. Hayhurst. Mr. Clements, do you need the question repeated?
Pardon?
Do you need the question repeated?
No. We admit and realize that the foster care situation in West Virginia is not the best. We have a lot of children that have been sent out of state, and a lot of the problem just comes basically down is people, for some reason or another, don't want to take in the foster children, or if they want to take them in, they want to take them in because of a stipend that would go with them taking care of those foster children. As far as the Child Protective Services goes, we gave the DHHR the authority to take funding and stuff that was there for excess unfunded positions and give that to the people that were there to try to keep them. My granddaughter worked in the DHHR for a few months before she ended up she's now in South Korea teaching English, but she worked with CPS and would go to different places to try to see what's going on. But we're doing the best we can with the material that we've got. We've got the authority to give them the funding to try to keep these people. I want to tell you, from what I understand and talking to people, I would not want that job. It's a very difficult thing, and I think people, even if you paid them a large amount, it takes a special person to do that work. And I really admire and thank the people that are willing to do it.
Mr. Clements, I'm going to address to you question number 3. In 2020, despite the pandemic, West Virginia had historically high voter turnout with unquestioned security. Turnout was enhanced by the availability of absentee ballots for every registered voter. Do you favor or oppose making absentee voting available to all registered voters who apply for a ballot?
I think that yes, if absentee voters apply for a ballot, as long as there is some type of control, so that we know that when that absentee ballot goes to John Doe, that John Doe is the one that's voting and bringing it back. I do not favor just send out the ballots and send them back in. I do think we need to have some control on our elections. Remember, I told you I grew up in the southern part of the state. I've seen how elections work, and I like to see a little bit more security on those ballots. I think that because we have early voting, unless you have some type of physical impairment that would prevent you from getting to a place to vote early, I would favor extending the early voting period out to make sure people have the opportunity to come. But I feel it belongs up to them. It's up to the person to go vote. And we need to make sure that the votes that are cast are secure votes.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. Mr. Hayhurst, could you respond, please?
Sure. Yes, I absolutely would support allowing, I think what your question gets at is no excuse absentee ballot. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I support that. I mean, we've run elections in this country for a couple hundred years. They're largely secure, and particularly on the national level or in larger races, there have been little to no races that were overturned or had significant issues of fraud in them. And I understand Mr. Clements' remark about southern West Virginia, but that was 40 some years ago probably, and we've come a long way in this state. Our elections are secure in West Virginia and throughout the country. Oregon and other states just they do all mail-in balloting. They've done fine, and they've figured out a way to do it where everyone has the opportunity to vote if they choose to do that. I think our system is good in the early voting. We could expand that a few days, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't allow folks to vote absentee, no excuse, if that's what we choose to do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Hayhurst, I'm going to direct the next question to you. Should children K through 12, the education outside the public school system, be held accountable for student educational outcomes? Oh, I'm sorry, I did miss it. Thank you, Lindell. Question number 4 is up there, yes. Do you believe Joe Biden was legitimately elected President of the United States in 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Clements, how would you answer that?
I have to say yes. He was elected President of the United States.
Okay.
But do I think there were irregularities? That's very possible. Maybe not enough to destroy the election. Joe Biden is the President of the United States.
Okay. Now, question 5. Okay, so Mr. Clemens, this will be your question to start. Should children K through 12 education outside the public school system be held accountable for student educational outcomes? If so, how?
Would you repeat the question
I will.
again?
Should kindergarten through 12th grade education outside the public school system be held accountable for student educational outcomes? If so, how?
Yes, I think they should, and I have discussed this before. I feel that the students that are outside the public school system should meet the same standards, take the same testing as the students in the public school system. And that way they need to be held accountable. The people teaching need to be held accountable. I do not feel like that, well, we have a lot of homeschool situations that I question, but still I think they need to be held accountable and meet the standards that we require of all of our students in this state.
Okay. Mr. Hayhurst?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I'm in this race. This legislature has been, for the last 6 years, under Republican control, and we can check the voting records, but they have been reducing, the educational requirements to graduate high school in this state. They've reduced the number of credit hours that were required to educate high school in this state. They have opened up the Hope Scholarship and charter schools. Check those bills. They're unregulated. It's not regulated. They don't have to pass the same exams that our high school students do. There are no standards that those students have to abide by. So this legislature, controlled by the Republican supermajority, hasn't done that. In fact, if you are homeschooling, there's no accountability. You can take your child out of school and they can, be taught. And the important part of that is, I'm all for, if you want to homeschool your child, that's great. I'm all happy for you to do that. But your child and other children need to meet the same educational standards that those in public school need to meet. Because what's going to happen, particularly with the Hope Scholarship, if they allow that, give you money to teach your children at home, the $4,300 or $4,600 that the student aid formula, and you teach your child, there are going to be a number of people who in this state who take their children out of school, take that money, and then don't teach them. And we're going to have a generation of students who are not just undereducated, but uneducated. That doesn't help West Virginia at all. You want to attract new people here, new businesses here, keep our young people here. The only way you do that is by having an educated population. And so this legislature has done everything that they can to reduce those standards. I will go there. I'll make sure we keep the standards and maintain our education in West Virginia.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hayhurst. I will now address this question to you. What is your position on permitting transgender kindergarten through 12th grade students to participate in sports aligned with their gender identity? You, Mr. Hayes. That's okay.
My apologies. So, you know, I think this issue has obviously been brought up on many levels, that there's been a bill passed in West Virginia dealing with this. Personal feelings aside, this issue, it's a social issue that is really, from my perspective, it's just being used to divide a wedge between the left and the right. That's all it's doing. It's not a problem in West Virginia. I officiate high school basketball and volleyball. This is not a problem that I see. I travel all around the state, officiate games. There's no issue. It's not there. It's just simply a divisive issue that's being brought up, particularly by the right, to try to divide regular West Virginians on this issue. And by the way, you know, there's a whole other world out there. And young people generally, I consider myself to be somewhat young, I'm 39 years old, they don't like this stuff. We hear a lot of talk from this Republican legislature about keeping our young people here. But when you pass bills like this, all it does is shove them right out the door. It sends them away. Because all it says to them is that we're not welcoming to people who look, think, and act differently than us. That's all it does. It doesn't change anything because it's not a problem here. All it does is divide people in the hopes that they're going to win an election. So I would have voted against that bill.
Okay. Mr. Clements, could you respond?
Yes. I feel like that when we allow transgender people, particularly males that want to transgender to female, to participate in the sports, we are punishing our young ladies in our state. Now, first of all, I will agree with what Mr. Hayhurst says. We have not seen this problem yet. And as far as it not, I welcome, and I think everybody ends up welcoming people of, no matter what their sexual orientation would be, within the state. But when we transgress that over into an athletic event, which was made, Title IX was put in so that girls could participate in sports. And we built up this tremendous thing, and now we end up in Philadelphia where the fastest woman swimmer is a man. There is definite physical differences, and I think we need to protect these young ladies that want to participate in sport, but yet we don't have to say, no, I don't feel like we're saying, no, you're not welcome, because there's a lot of people that are going to come, and there's a lot of people that feel like that if they can participate in these sports and things without being overshadowed by an event like this, I think we're much better off.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Clements, I'm going to direct this next question to you. What is your position on diversifying West Virginia's energy industry by allowing community solar facilities where a homeowner can purchase a share of a solar farm to produce their own electricity?
Okay, let me make sure I get this. You're saying you want to know whether we want to have a reverse metering or what it is so that they can buy their own solar farm and produce their own electricity? I'm in favor of that. That doesn't bother me at all. I think they should be allowed to, if they want to participate in the solar energy or green energy, I think they should be allowed to do that. I have no problem. There's no sense dwelling on it. I think they should.
Mr. Hayhurst?
Yeah, I agree. We should be in West Virginia trying to diversify our energy portfolio, or not necessarily trying, but allowing our energy portfolio to be diversified. Coal obviously has been around for a long time. It has declined in for the last 50 years for various reasons. We've seen an oil and gas boom in the last decade and a half. But as any West Virginian knows who's lived longer than 15 years or 20 years knows, that goes up and down. And we should, I applaud Governor Justice and others who brought in the bus company that's building green buses, battery-powered buses in West Virginia. Anyone who wants to, we're a free country, right? If you want to build your own solar plant on your house or in your yard or whatever, you should be able to do that. And if you can sell that back to the grid, you should be able to do that too.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to address the next question to you, Mr. Hayhurst. What should West Virginia do to address climate change and the increased flooding it is bringing to the state?
It's a good question. I will say on a state level, it's hard to address that specifically as a state legislator. Obviously I believe in climate change. I think it's evident. I think most people now agree that something is happening. Even the governor of Florida now kind of agrees with the last hurricane that came through, agrees that climate change is happening, and we're seeing increased weather events, not just the number, but the severity, the intensity of those things. So, West Virginia generally should be cognizant of that. And, to the extent we control any sort of energy policy, which there's not a lot of that coming from the state level, it more comes from the federal level, but we should be cognizant and try what we can to reduce, our greenhouse emissions so that we have a planet that survives, longer than we are here. We have to think about the future generations. We have a beautiful state, and we want to keep it that way.
Mr. Clements, would you respond?
Yes, thank you. I think we have done a lot, and of course, I sometimes question how much of this climate change is man-made. We have been cutting back on our emissions in this country, and yet China, India, and Africa are producing coal plants like you can't believe. We have done much in the state as far as saying, yes, we can build solar energy fields, farms in our state. We even passed a bill this last time that allows nuclear energy to come into the state before it was outlawed. And of course, I go back and look at the tremendous record that the Navy has had on their ships that are nuclear-powered ships in small containers. There can be small nuclear plants built everywhere that can cut down and have zero emissions. But I think one of the things that's happening is we're pushing this zero emission things before we have the technology and the infrastructure to support it. And that's going to be very difficult for us if we don't have our carbon-based energy to transition over time into what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Clements, I'll direct this question to you. Some people suggest that good roads, a clean environment, and a skilled workforce may be more attractive than tax cuts to bring new businesses to West Virginia. What do you think?
I am a great believer in infrastructure. If you don't have infrastructure, you're in trouble. I think we've done so much in improving our roads, improving our work toward getting all of these bridges and things that are antiquated. If we have good infrastructure, if we have good schools, and I think we've got good schools, and I think that by people having a choice in education is going to attract people into our state. We can have good schools. Do we have good health care? Do we have good recreation opportunities? All of these things are very important in bringing people into our state. I live in New Martinsville. If a plant opens in Marshall County or in Wetzel County or Ohio in there, those people come in there, they got a choice. We can go to Ohio, we can go to West Virginia, we can come to Pennsylvania. They can go to any of the 3 states and still be living within the commuting distance of that. So we need to have those things that are attractive. But I said, you know, the first thing people notice when they come into your state is your roads. If your roads are bad, you got trouble. And we need highways in our state, and I'm a firm believer in working toward that. But I'm also a firm believer in establishing good living conditions for all the people that want to come and live in West Virginia.
Thank you. Mr. Hayhurst.
I totally agree with the statement. This legislature tends to be focused on the tax cuts, however. We absolutely need better infrastructure. Interstates are fine. You go off the interstate, however, you can go right out here on 73 and the road's falling over the hill. The folks out there are extremely worried about it, and we have to build good roads everywhere, not just the interstates, not just the exchanges. We have to build good roads everywhere. Infrastructure is not just roads today. There's a lot of businesses aren't as much brick and mortar anymore as they are high-speed internet. There are areas in West Virginia that don't have high-speed internet, or the internet they have doesn't work half the time. You go to my parents' house in Folsom, it's off more than it's on. If somebody wanted to move there and work from home, couldn't do it because they don't have a good enough internet connection to do it. Streaming internet, you can't cut the cord. My parents have to pay a $250 cable bill because they don't have good enough internet to stream. All those things lead to good living conditions, good and attract business. Public education, under attack in West Virginia. This county alone stands to lose tens of millions of dollars through Amendment 2 and the Hope Scholarship together. Combine those 2 things together, stand to lose tens of millions of dollars through those 2 things this legislature is trying to do. You can't build, and this county, Monongalia County, has a great public school system. Think about all the other counties, the little counties, Wetzel, Tyler, Doddridge. If they're losing money from their budgets, how are they going to hire the teachers they can't already hire? How are they going to attract new teachers and new people there, new business? Absolutely agree all those things need to be addressed. This legislature isn't, and that's why I'm going to Charleston.
Okay. I'm addressing this question to you, Mr. Hayhurst. Some analysts suggest that last fiscal year's $1.3 billion surplus was caused by lowballed revenue estimates, massive infusion of pandemic-related federal dollars, and failure to adequately fund existing state needs. Please explain your approach to managing a state budget surplus that may or may not be durable.
I agree with the premise of the question. A lot of that money is either from federal funds, the $1.3 billion surplus, or the 2,000 unfunded teacher positions in the state, the thousands of unfilled regional jail and other state agency positions, and then just not providing or just some what I would call funny math with the budget. In budgeting, you can make the budget look however you want to, and the governor's done that, and this legislature's done it. There's some money there, however, and we should use that either to, both fix one-time needs. There are roads that need fixed, repairs, maintenance to the roads. We have billions with a B dollars of unfunded maintenance or deferred maintenance on roads in the state. We should also, increase pay to the extent we can do it, and do it fiscally responsible to keep it in the budget for areas of need. Regional jail workers, there's a crisis in our regional jail, crisis in those jails. Also, we should give some money back to the taxpayer if we could do that responsibly and fiscally responsibly, and move forward with a budget that makes sense for West Virginia.
Okay. Mr. Clements, would you respond?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we have a surplus in the budget. And a lot of that budget, as surplus money, has come in from a flat budget. West Virginia has shrunk in population, but yet we don't need to continue to grow our government. We want to return that money to the people. And how we do it is the question. The Senate plan wants to do away with the tax on inventory, equipment, machinery, and vehicles, and that money would come from the state budget to backfill into these counties. And the counties are not going to lose money because of Amendment 2. They will continue to get the money that will not be coming in to them from direct taxation of inventory, equipment, and machinery. And I continually hear people say, well, that's only for big out-of-state companies. It's not. Most of these big out-of-state companies that come in have worked to deal with the counties that they're not paying these taxes anyway. But I've got a beer distributor in New Martinsville that pays thousands of dollars on his tax on his inventory. And it's for West Virginia mom and pop stores that have inventory. Anybody's got inventory pays it. How many of you deal with small businesses? They're everywhere. Yes, we've got a surplus, and yes, we want to return that money to the people in the state of West Virginia. Thank you.
Mr. Hayhurst? Oh, I'm sorry. I was so engrossed in the answers. Okay. Mr. Clements, I'm going to address this question to you. Amendment 1 would change the West Virginia Constitution to state that courts and judges may play no part in the impeachment process in the state legislature. Do you support or oppose Amendment 1? Please explain your position.
Well, let me say this. When the state Supreme Court got out of hand, first of all, you have to realize a couple of things. The state Supreme Court writes their own budget. They hand us a bill. We have to write them a check. We have no control over where they spend that money. They were not spending that money in a prudent manner and were actually being very reckless in the way they spent it. So we went to impeach them. Well, the House impeached them, and we sat as a Senate and tried one of the justices. And I will tell you, there were 34 senators there, and there were no Democrats or Republicans in that room. We were 34 senators doing our job. The justice that was tried was acquitted. But then when we were getting ready for the next trial, the Supreme Court stepped in and said, well, you didn't do something right, so we're stopping all of this. And we stopped. The only thing that this amendment is going to do, or what this amendment is going to do, is going to say that they cannot interfere with the impeachment process. Now, someone will say, well, they don't have due process. They get a fair trial in the Senate. I have sat in a fair trial, what was really a fair trial in the Senate. And I'm sure that if they have other problems, there would still be appeals into the federal court. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure that there would be some type of recourse. Thank you. I do support Amendment 1.
Mr. Hayhurst.
Well, let's all think back to our high school civics class. We learned about checks and balances, right? This amendment would fundamentally alter the checks and balances in our state constitution. I'm a lawyer. One of the things that our founders of our federal constitution, the great genius of them, was instituting checks and balances. Every branch has a checks and a balance on the other branch of government. What this is trying to do is this legislature, again, trying to control, have all control. What this would do is not allow our state Supreme Court, which all Supreme Courts around the country, including our U.S. Supreme Court, I don't want to get all lawyerly on everybody, but it's called, there's a case called Madison v. Marbury, and what courts in our system get to do is interpret laws. They get to interpret what the law says and whether it's constitutional. What this would do is take away the Supreme Court's role, not just in their own impeachment, but in every impeachment across the board, in the executive branch, in the legislative branch. So, although I'm sure Mr. Clements gave or tried to give the justices a fair trial, who's to say the legislature in 5, 6, 7 years from now is going to be fair in trying a case? That's what the checks and balances are for. A couple of things I wanted to go back to, just to correct the record. We passed a constitutional amendment last election that actually requires that the Supreme Court used to be able to write their own budget. They can't now. The legislature actually has to approve the budget. We did that a couple of years ago in our election, so that's incorrect. And then the other thing is due process. All that happened in the last impeachment process was the legislature wrote rules and then they didn't follow them. All the Supreme Court said, and it wasn't by the way, it wasn't the justices who were being impeached, it was a whole other set because they had to be appointed, said, no, if you're going to do this, you have to follow your rules. If you're not going to follow your rules, you can't do this. That's all this court said. The legislature could have just gone back and did it all over again and followed the rules. They chose not to do that. Now they want to change the Constitution. Let's not let them do that.
Okay. Mr. Hayhurst, I'll direct this next question to you. Amendment 2 would change the West Virginia Constitution to give the legislature the power to control taxes on machinery, equipment, and inventory for businesses and on personal property for individuals. Amendment 2 would not automatically lower taxes, and a plan to replace lost revenue has not been agreed upon. Do you support or oppose Amendment 2? Please explain your position.
I fundamentally oppose it, and here's why. What, again, this legislature is trying to do is put control of local county budgets, school board budgets in their hands. Again, this legislature might do the right thing, but who's to say a legislature in the future will do the right thing? I'm running for the legislature, and I don't trust the legislature to do the right thing in that situation. The money that these taxes provide to local governments are for education, overwhelmingly for education, for fire, EMS, and the vital services that local governments provide. The amendment allows the legislature to change, either to exempt or not exempt. That's all it does, is it allows the legislature to exempt or not exempt these classifications of property. By the way, I'm a small business owner and I pay the business and inventory tax, also on vehicles. I pay that tax. Annoying? Yes, it is. But I also like having a police department that's going to show up if I need them, an EMS service that's going to show up if I need them, and a school system that educates. I don't have children yet, but I hope to someday that they're going to educate my children and the children of my neighbor, who's the future of my economy. In the plan, the so-called plan, only the Senate has put forward a plan. Nothing's been passed. It's an entire proposal. The House doesn't agree with it, or at least they haven't put out a proposal of their own. And what would happen with the proposed plan is that, well, we maintain this flat budget forever. Is that really going to happen? No. It also assumes that they like to talk about, out of one side of their mouth, well, we've lost 100,000 people in the last decade, so we need to shrink the size of government. But this plan assumes we're going to gain hundreds of thousands of people over the course of the next several decades to put this money back in place. So which is it? It doesn't add up. We can't give this control up to the legislature. We can't play politics with this money. Too important.
Mr. Clements, would you respond?
Yes. One of the things that has been mentioned all the time is if Amendment 2 passes, we'll shut down the schools, we'll shut down the fire departments, we'll shut down the EMS and everything. That's not going to happen. The money will be replaced into the counties by the legislature. The counties will have their budget. They will do their budget. The school systems will get their money through the school aid formula. The counties will get their money. And for most of the counties, it will be an increase in revenue. We have a lot of counties that are having a downward trend in their revenue. And eventually, they're going to have some bailouts. We've already had to bail out one county in West Virginia because of their revenue just left. Now, I bring up one thing that's always mentioned about that's this legislature and that's this program. In the 90s, we put our pension plans on a 40-year funding cycle. And every legislature, both Democrat and Republican-controlled legislature, has religiously taken care of that, and we will soon have our pension plans funded at 100%. The best, some of the best in the nation in our state, and we've stuck to it. The governor makes his revenue estimate. The first thing that happens is that the actuary says this is how much money that you need for the pension plans. That's put in there, and then the budget is built off of what's left after the pension plans are funded. That same thing will happen with the counties. They will not lose their funding, as a lot of people want to make you believe.
Okay, Mr. Clements, I will address this question to you. Amendment 4 would change the West Virginia Constitution to give the legislature the authority to overrule or change any rules or policies adopted by the West Virginia State Board of Education. The Board of Education, an appointed bipartisan body with members approved by the legislature, opposes this amendment. Do you support or oppose amendment number 4? Please explain your position.
I support amendment number 4. I think one of the things that you need to look at is most of the regulating bodies within our state, the DEP, the Labor Department, whoever it is that writes regulations, those regulations go before the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee. That committee is made up of both Democrats, Republicans, House, and Senate. And what happens at that point is they can either reject the rules and send them back, they can modify them and send it to thing, or they can approve them. Then those rules are sent to the legislature in a rules bundle and are passed. And there's a lot of times that there are very controversial rules which are pulled out and voted on separately. Once the legislature votes on it, they become the effective law. That's true of every appointed body in the state except for the State Board of Education. Now, do we want to be in the classroom? I don't think that's what our objective is, but I told a story earlier today. I talked to a superintendent one time, and I asked her, why do you promote someone from the 3rd to the 4th grade that cannot add and subtract? And the answer I got was, well, if we retain them then when they get to high school, they'll be old enough to quit school, and that will hurt our graduation rate. We need to graduate good graduating seniors. We don't need to just have a number to say we graduated 90% or 95 or 98% of our people. We have no control over what that is. If I had anything to say, the graduation rate would be done away with. It would not be a published item. But as someone said, do they talk about it? Because you can measure it.
Mr. Hayhurst.
Have we noticed a theme with these amendments? It's all about control in Charleston. The legislature wants to be a super legislature and wants to control every aspect of our lives. I don't want this legislature controlling the curriculum decisions that educators make in our state. We hear a lot from the right about politics in our classroom. Well, this is exactly what this would do. It would make decisions of our State Board of Education and educators trying to educate our children, facing obstacles that we can't imagine on a daily basis, from addicted, parents or children from, addicted families and broken up families, being raised by grandparents, trying to control them even further, and deciding what it is they can and can't teach, and what they should teach, and how they should teach it, and what curriculum is good, what curriculum is bad. Putting all that before a political body just makes absolutely zero sense unless you want to control the narrative, control the curriculum. we can't let this happen. Our education system has been independent, and it's independent for a reason, so that politics don't play a role in our classroom. I don't want my child or children or nieces or nephews or whoever learning one side or the other, right or left. That's for them and their families to understand. This would allow the legislature to create rules on curriculum and decide what my children, your children learn. That's not a decision for a political body. It's a decision for educators who know what they're doing, who've been trained to educate children in this country, and you should vote no on Amendment 4.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, that ends the questions that I have for you, and thank you very much. They were very interesting answers. We have questions from the audience. New Senate District 2 stretches from the Cheat to the Ohio. The Monongalia County portion has little in common with the rest of the district and has less than a third of the district population. I live near Cheat Lake and feel like a foreigner in District 2. How do you intend to effectively represent all constituents in a district so large and with such diverse interests? So I think you would start that, Mr. Clements.
Well, let me say that is, yes, the second district is large, but not near as large as it was before. I had 9 counties in the second district, but reapportionment cut that down from 9 to 6. And I will say this, I spend most of my days working with every one of our counties. I have spent a lot of time in Monongalia County working with the people here to try to develop, particularly on the things that I can help with in the legislature. I have spent much time working on Exit 155 out here. I spend a lot of time working on Harmony Grove so that we can get that new milk plant up and running to provide the jobs that we need in Mon County that was lost when Milan shut down. I do not and will not feel like that I live in Wetzel County and that's the only thing I care about. I cared about all 9 of my counties, and I will always care about the 6 counties that I've got now because that's who I represent, these 6 counties. I know Mon County is a lot different than Ohio Valley is, but we still have a lot of things in common that we need to work on. This upper Ohio, or upper Monongalia, I guess I should say lower Monongalia Valley here in the Morgantown area is the jewel of the state of West Virginia. It really is. And I intend to work to keep it that way.
Thank you. Mr. Hayhurst, could you respond?
Well, I live and work here in Morgantown, and I grew up in Wetzel County, a little town called Folsom. So I know the differences well between what Cheat Lake's interests are and what the people of the Short Line, which is where I grew up. It's what's called the road between Clarksburg and New Martinsville, or actually the railroad between Clarksburg and New Martinsville is called, and we call it the Short Line. I understand those differences. I will represent them to the best of my ability in the state legislature. In the last 8 months we've been running this campaign, I've put 16,000 miles in my truck going back and forth. That will continue when I'm in the legislature. I work hard and I will represent everyone. And I will say, Mon County has the majority, not majority of voters, but the largest number of voters by county and individuals by county than any other county in the district, by a lot actually. I certainly understand the diverse nature of the district and will work hard to listen to all of my constituents to make the best decision I can for each and every one of them. Okay.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think it's now time to give your closing statement. And as we said earlier, you have 2 minutes to give your closing statement. Mr. Clements, would you go first, please?
Well, I will say that I have been representing the 2nd District now for 6 years. I've seen tremendous changes come to West Virginia in those 6 years. We have taken ourselves out of the judicial hellhole that we were in prior to that. We have brought new industry into the state of West Virginia and will continue to do so by getting rid of regulations and things that in the past have hampered our economic development. We passed a road bond issue to create better roads. We're working to expand this broadband into the whole state of West Virginia. Well, a lot of these things cannot happen overnight. They take time, but they're coming. I was out last summer into Minnehaha Springs. They were getting broadband. It's coming everywhere in the state of West Virginia. It just takes time. We're running fiber from Bridgeport, West Virginia to New Martinsville and back into 100. And so we're trying to bring West Virginia into this century and look forward to the next. And the closing comment I have basically is we cannot afford to go back to the way we were doing things before in the past in West Virginia. Or if we do, we will continue to slide. And I think that we have gotten to the point now that we have stopped the slide and are going to move forward. And West Virginia will become a destination, not only for jobs, but also for people. I thank you all for the opportunity to be here, and I would ask for your support in November.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. Mr. Hayhurst.
Well, first I want to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clements, for being here this evening. I think it's been a good event, and I think you've seen the differences between Mr. Clements and myself. One thing I want to note is West Virginia, it's interesting this legislature likes to talk about we've moved West Virginia forward and whatnot, but we just lost 100,000 people. The census said we just lost 100,000 people. We lost a congressional representative in our federal government. We're not moving forward. When I came to college here in 2001, it's the first time I ever heard of cable internet. That was 21 years ago. Why don't we have cable internet in every corner of West Virginia today? It doesn't take that long to run some cable to fiber optics. We just haven't, this legislature is not focused on that. They've not put the money into it that needs to be done. We could do it, and we could do it very quickly. Infrastructure. Yep, we've built some interstates, we've built some exchanges, but go outside of those areas. The roads are crumbling. The bridges are in disrepair. You want to attract people to West Virginia, have good roads everywhere. We are taking money, millions of dollars away from our public schools. The number one thing, and they like to talk about tax cuts and taxes. And by the way, this legislature likes to harp on the 5 new big businesses that come to West Virginia. They all came here with the taxes that are in place. It's schools, it's infrastructure, it's the working population that the working people that they can hire to work in their business. I'd also note most of those businesses are being built on the border. West Virginia can't afford, as Mr. Clements said, to move backwards. That's what we're doing. I'm running for this office to move West Virginia forward, and that's what I intend to do when I'm elected in November. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a really interesting forum, and we appreciate your attendance.